Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's Jeff Blankenburg as usual, and I'm here to do some things, to build some stuff. And I had an interesting weekend. I don't know if weekends are even a thing anymore. It's a thing we do sometimes. But on Friday, I had an opportunity to get together with a friend of mine, and much like anything else in life, there's opportunities for us to practice and get better at the things that we do. And sometimes that's just spending time watching somebody else do their work. It's actually one of the reasons that I really like Twitch, is you get an opportunity to see other people do the kind of work that you do, and you get to learn from those things. And so on Friday, I got to take that a step deeper. I actually got to go sit with a friend of mine for a few hours, probably like 3 hours, I think. And we really reworked a lot of how I think about writing JavaScript, how I think about writing Node. And so it's got me thinking about a lot of the ways that I've done things, a lot of the ways that I have approached problems in code. And the thing I think that stood out to me the most is that I'm just making my life harder for myself. There's a lot of things, practices that I was just relying on because they worked. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you write code and it works, in my book, that is good code. But there's ways to make your life easier. There's ways to make your life better as you go through all this stuff. And that's one of the things that I really discovered on Friday. And so for those of you that maybe have ever played any golf, you know, sometimes you sit with a golf coach and they tweak your swing a little bit and they help you think about visualizing your shot and doing all those kinds of things. And I felt like I kind of had that moment on Friday where my eyes were kind of opened and I realized that I had stopped asking a lot of the important questions, like, why am I doing it this way? And why does this thing need to be here? And how am I handling things like testing? And it really made me think a lot about how I could be doing things differently. So, on Friday, we spent, like I said, we spent those 3 hours going through all of that, and I spent the whole weekend, it just consumed me. It's all I could think about was, how can I get back to this? How can I fix this? How can I work on these things and make this better? And then how can I apply those lessons to all of the things that I do in Alexa? And so what I thought I would do today, we have been building this Alexa skill, Dev Tips, for a couple weeks now. And, on and off, I really only build when I'm on this stream, so maybe 6 hours a week. Maybe we're 10 or 12 hours of development into it. Not very far. But as I'm building it, I realize that I'm using a lot of those practices that probably should be not put out to pasture. They're not bad practices. There's just better ones. And that's kind of what I thought I would do today, is spend some time getting into a code base that I only wrote a couple weeks ago, and how I already want to tear it up and think about it differently. So I'm not going to be able to apply all the lessons that I learned on Friday to this, because what I was building, and I can show you this here, is our chatbot, the thing that we worked on all last week. And so if I come to this view, we have a chatbot, and this is something that I've been working on for a while, right? So we had all sorts of stuff in here about getting specific data and playing sound effects and moving sound effects and approving sound effects and doing all this. But this is a Node application that just runs, and it waits for messages to come in, and then once those messages come in, those things can happen. Alexa doesn't really work that way. Alexa isn't always running. The code for your Alexa skills all exists, but isn't running until it's called. And I think that's a slightly different way to think about it, because in the Alexa world, I'm triggering a function, and that function runs when I want to do this stuff. Good morning, Gold Zulu. Good morning, rblank28. So I started reworking this, and it's still a mess. You can see if you look over here, there's lots and lots of red and warnings and all sorts of stuff. But the core to all of this is taking and boiling down just to the things that I really need. And so I have this on message handler. This is the thing that comes in my chatbot, and then I have to log that stuff. So this is a call out to my database to save the information. And then this is where we get really into the meat of things. Instead of the giant if statement that I had before, we swapped it out for a switch statement where we have specific commands like age and followers. And then I've actually broken down all of my commands, so things like age and followers and dice, I've broken those down into their own files. And so we have a file called age, and in here you can see that I'm doing most of the same things, right, that I was doing before. I'm calling out to this dcappy.me URL, and I'm getting the account age of someone on Twitch. So if you come over to the chat and you want to see how long Gold Zulu's been on Twitch, for example, I can say age Gold Zulu, and it says, oh, he's been on Twitch for 8 months and 3 weeks. So that's pretty cool that just passes right through, right? And you can do that for anybody. If you just type age, however, it tells you how old I am. So that kind of stuff is kind of super fun, and it's a fun interactive way to play on this channel. My goodness, Saduki is here this morning. Everybody say hello to Saduki. She is a fantastic friend of mine, and it's neat to see her here this morning. So anyway, so that's some of the basic chat functionality that we built. And what I wanted to do was think about how I could apply some of these individual lessons, right? How do I break down each individual kind of thing that I'm doing into its own file? This is something that I've played with before, where I have module.exports in individual files, and I can kind of break my functionality down, which also then creates for me individual functions like age here that I can then test. So this is something that I've also really struggled with in building for Alexa, is that I never have an effective way to really do a lot of testing. And so create my voices here. My goodness, we got a nice crew already this morning. This is good. But I really wanted to be able to figure out, how do I apply these kinds of lessons, these things that I learned on Friday, sitting for just a few hours with a friend of mine. How do I take this stuff and apply it to what I do with Alexa? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new, let's get rid of this, a new Visual Studio Code instance. I think I can just do that here, new window. And let's go and open that project that we were working on a couple weeks ago. So this is Alexa Dev Tips, and we'll just take, is that the one I want? I think it is. Yeah. And as we look at this, we can see that we have one core index file, and this is how most of my code has looked so far. So we come into this, we have all of our require statements at the top, we have our launch request handler. These structures, this kind of thing where I have a handler and I have my can handle, all of this stuff generally needs to be in this file. I don't think that there's a lot of reason to extract these pieces, but what I do think can move is this code, the stuff that lives inside my handle function. And this is the stuff that I think I really want to be able to change up a little bit. So I have to think about how I really want to do this, because I don't think that I want to necessarily build a handler dot, like if we look at the other one that I have here, right? If I come to my index, you can see up here at the top that I have a commands. So commands points to a, and maybe I should do this. Maybe this is the way that I want to think about this. But commands points to this index file, and this index file requires a bunch of other files, and those files are all module.exports into the original index that we were looking at. I'm always really torn on this, because when we come down here to the bottom of my index file, no, not that one. Let's come back here. When we come to the bottom of my index file, this is where I have to add my request handlers. This is where I have to bring them all in. And I feel like I could do this a number of ways. I don't want to over-engineer. I guess that's my fear, is that I don't want to break this down into too many small parts, because then we end up kind of wrecking everything. So, how do I want to start on this? And if you guys have thoughts or feedback as we go through this, I'd be very interested to hear it. But I think I want to start restructuring this code, especially because this is such a nice, good starter, clean set of handlers and code. There isn't a lot being done yet, so I don't have a ton of additional functionality. And another thing that I'm really going to be focused on as we go through this is, how do I test this stuff? How do I, good morning, W. Giorgio, how do I, here's the thing that I'm really struggling with, right? If we, here, let me come into Lambda, and let's create a folder in here called test. And then we'll have inside there, we'll have a file called, launch request test, no, .test.js. Okay, so I have this JS file that's going to be my tests, and then if I come back to my other folder that I had here, I have a good structure for starting on this. Inside here, I have a bot.test, right? So we'll take this, and we'll bring it over to this one, just so we have an initial structure, right? I'm bringing in assert. I don't need commands because that's something that I was doing in my other project, but we'll need to bring in my actual code. And then I'll just leave one of these, just so I have a structure to use. And then we'll take the rest of these. So I started building tests for making sure my followers and all this other stuff works properly. That's another thing, by the way, if you guys didn't know, that's a command we have where you can come in here and you can say followers Saduki, and she has 4 followers. So let's fix that problem too. If you guys aren't following her, let's drop a follow on Saduki. I don't know how much she streams on Twitch, if at all, but there you go. So those are 2 commands that you can use to find out, like when you see other people in the chat, you can find out about them. Goodness, thirsty morning. Went for a nice long walk this morning. Got up earlier than I normally do. Awesome. Well, we're gonna have to get you streaming, Sarah. We'll make that happen at some point. So there you go. So that is a command that always exists. It's always here running. It's kind of a fun way to just check in on people and be like, oh, they've been here for a long time, or man, they've got a lot of followers. Maybe I should follow them. Sarah's been on here for 9 years. My goodness. Like, are you one of the OGs? Is your ID number like 6? Okay, so I have my assert statement, and then I have let's do a in our Lambda folder. Let's do an npm install OG, just one of the originals. Original group, yeah, that's a good way to say it. Install. Let's get that in there. Okay, so this is what my tests are going to look like. So one of the things that I really struggle with, if we look at how these things work, is I come in here, and I have, yes, this is a launch request, right? So we've detected in my code that this is a launch request, and then we say, okay, cool. So then we want to execute this code if it is a launch request. Well, here's one of the things that I really get hung up on, and that is, what can I test? And how do I validate that the thing that's happening here is valid, right? And there's I don't know the right, I need to diagram this out. Let's just open a new file here for a second. Let's talk about this. So the first thing that happens, step 1, user says something. In this case, we'll say, Alexa, ask DevTips about, Lord of Sound just bumped my lamp to yellow. Actually, Sarah, that's another thing. If you didn't know that exists, there's a lamp command. And so you can do, there's a lamp behind me. I don't know if you can see it. It's that lamp right there. But you can change its color. You just say lamp, red. Boom, it's red. And you can change it to, unfortunately, all of the color names don't work, and this isn't a limitation of my code. This is a limitation of the LifeX API. But if you know the hex value, you can drop hex values in there. So you could say lamp and then the hex value for Dodger Blue, if you know that, and it will change it to that color for you. But it doesn't accept a lot of the familiar color names. And obviously, Brain's Place, black is not a color a lamp can do. So we're building a bunch of this stuff. There you go, Sarah. You just changed it to blue. So that's how you do that. And it even responds and lets you know that it updated it. So Gold Zulu, for the angry monkey and the sound, those are not working right now. I'm in a state of refactoring the chatbot to this new structure, and that is one of the things that I probably will not have working until Friday or Monday. But it is something that's coming. So again, Saduki, having not been here a lot before, or maybe you've just been lurking, I've been building this chatbot for a little while. And one of the things that it can do is play sound effects. And so you could do something like Angry Monkey, and if there's a sound effect for that, then it'll play the sound effect live on the stream. So it's kind of like changing the lamp, except it plays a sound effect. So we're doing a lot of kind of fun interactive stuff, but that's not what I'm working on today, unfortunately. We're going to save that for another time. But yes, I agree, Gold Zulu. It's not that Unspecified Clarkcell gave me a lot of work. He gave me a lot to think about. And so now I'm trying to apply some of those lessons. And I think that this is a good lesson for everybody, is that there's never a time where you know everything. And I'll bet that Clark sits with someone else and helps him like think through some things. And it's just one of those things, you need a tune-up once in a while. And I felt like Friday was a really good tune-up for me. And we're doing it again this Friday. We're going to sit and go through some more, because we didn't really touch on testing. But this is one of those things that I think I might even do on a regular basis. It's just good to pair with somebody that knows things you don't know, because you take lessons away that they may not even intentionally have been teaching, but that apply to the things that you're working on. So I recommend it to sit and talk with somebody or code with somebody that you haven't coded with in a while. They'll identify things like, oh, why are you doing that way, right? They're not insulting you. They're just asking a question. But the number of times that I've sat with someone and learned a ton from them, even if they're a junior developer, somebody that's new to the game, they'll have picked something up along the way that you'd never thought of before. It helps everybody get better. Yeah, Lord of Sound says, you could spend your entire life trying to learn the AWS APIs and platforms, and at the end you'd know less than 3%, and even that knowledge would already be out of date. I totally agree. So I want to just remind everybody, like, there's nothing about what I'm doing here that is meant to be tagged as, like, expert. I am doing a lot of things that make sense to me and that work in a specific situation, but it doesn't mean that there's a, like, that this has been blessed in some way. Good morning, Karthik. Oh, I just screwed that up. I'm trying to fix the little Twitch counter in the corner. It rolled off once I had the, oh my goodness. It rolled off once I got to double digits. So we gotta move that over just a little bit, and I guess that'll look like that. Okay, so that's kind of the lesson of today and this week is going to be that learning is key, and that as developers we're never done learning. There's never a time where you're just like, got this, never need to learn anything else again. I can just keep doing the same thing over and over. One, I think that would be really boring, and two, things change so frequently. I mean, there's a new JavaScript library every half hour, it seems like. So there's no way you can ever possibly keep up. But what you can do is find the things that work for you and work that way for a while. It's all about writing code that works. And as long as it achieves the goals, the latency, whatever the thing is that you need to do, it's good. It doesn't matter how perfect the code looks or whatever. If your code works, it's successful. And that's always kind of been my philosophy. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this flow because I really want to think about how this is going to work. So let's say ask dev tips about in-skill purchasing. So I just want to think about this flow. So they say this, step 2, W. Giorgio has an interesting JavaScript question. I have a variable that I'm passing in a function, which is the base of the object, such as character. ATK-LT combo and character being the variable. How do I do that? I tried it seems to me, W. Giorgio, that you have an object I mean, can you, I mean, does character dot at attack lt combo, like the thing that you wrote originally doesn't work? That thing doesn't work? I would think that if I have a function, action, right, and it takes a parameter that is character. Let's do this in code here. So if I have let character equal, and then I have this object thing, and in here I have I'll use your words, ATK LT combo. We'll say this is true. I don't actually know what your properties are, but let's say that that's it. And then there's another one named name, and this is Steve. And then down here I have a function called action, and I pass in that character. I should be able to say let combo equal character. Wow. Dot ATK LT combo. So somewhere I would have something like let action, no, let ACT equal action character. Something like that. So you have a function and you need to be able to access the properties inside that. That should just work. That's at least the approach that I would take, is that if you're passing character, the object, into a function, you have access to all those things inside there. And we see that all the time, right? I mean, look at handler input, right? Handler input is being passed into this can handle function and this handle function. And then I say things like handler input.request envelope. Those are just the object. So I don't know. You need to call it by the name that you're calling it in the function, right? So if I were to make this like, I don't know, Fred, then this would need to be Fred here, right? Whatever I call it inside this parentheses is what I need to refer to it here. I don't get to use the name that's out here. But I don't know. No, because it is the base and there are two objects, one called player and the other called computer. They still have the same data that I'm trying to parse through. So it sounds like maybe you need to refer to player or computer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to solve that one, W. Giorgio, but if you want to throw that in a gist, do you know what a GitHub gist is? Maybe you could toss it up there and we could look at it. I don't know, but that's my initial thought. Okay, so I want to talk about this testing flow because this is something that really bugs me. So step 2, Alexa uses speech to text and NLU, natural language understanding, to create a JSON manifest. Karthik, so I'm back on the Alexa dev tip skill, but with a big caveat, that is, I spent a bunch of time on Friday with a friend of mine working on my chatbot, and we just blew everything up. We started over in many ways, and so in here, I am now taking a more formulaic approach to writing my code. So where before I had like this big lanky if statement that just went on and on and on, now I have this really nice clean switch statement, and I call out to functions in my structure. So I have a file called commands, which if we look at this, there's a commands index, and it just exports these 4 functions. Each one of these functions lives in its own code base, and it's made me really think about how I'm building things. And we have some errors down here I'm interested to see. LifeX didn't like something. That's all right. It's fine. It's still running, so We're good. But so I've been basically breaking things apart, and it made me think hard about what is it that I'm really doing with Alexa, and how can I break this stuff down into useful pieces as well. And so the first thing that I thought I wanted to do is talk about the the chain of events that happens when I'm building something for Alexa. So step one, the user says something or types something. If I'm using the dev console, but they say something like, Alexa asks dev tips about in-skill purchasing. Step two, Alexa uses speech to text and natural language understanding to create a JSON manifest. What I want to do is identify the entire flow that happens, and then identify the pieces that I can really test. Because I'm very interested in building a robust set of testing for my skills, so that I feel confident that they're going to do the things that they should do. And one of the things that I always get hung up on is trying to start on this step one or step two, but I don't think that's where I'm going to start. So I create this JSON manifest. Step three, Alexa passes JSON to my Lambda function. Okay, so I have my Lambda function that receives that code. Now this is where we start doing something. So step four, yeah, this is where I'm at, Karthik. I feel like I need to identify the places where I can do some testing. There's two sides to this, and I'm going to talk about how I can do this one. Or really, step one and step two. There's a tool right now built into the dev portal that I could use to do this, I think. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I'm really interested in is starting on step four. So I get a JSON file sent to my code, to my Lambda function. This is where Alexa SDK identifies. No, let's do it before this. Request Alexa SDK request interceptor runs. That is exactly what I'm thinking, Karthik. I didn't realize that I had access to the NLU evaluator from SMAPI, but that might be huge. So I guess I should, for those of you that aren't super familiar with this stuff like Karthik and I am, I guess I should talk about this. So let's go here, and we'll look at the dev port. I just want to show you kind of how this initial testing stuff will work for my skill. So I'm going to come into this Alexa dev tip skill that I'm working on. And the thing that I want to do, if I look at my intents, is I have this cool evaluate model tool up here. So I didn't realize that there was an automated way to do this, but that's going to really sell me on this. There's a one-time only tool like this called the Utterance Profiler. And this allows me to say stuff like, let's say Karthik. If I just say Karthik to my skill, it's going to say, oh, that's the answer intent. And the answer is this. The slot is this. But it doesn't tell me anything about entity resolution or any of that other stuff. This is just the answer intent, and it thinks the slot is going to be Karthik. And then it's up to me to be able to, excuse me. It's up to me to make sure that I'm handling the slot value Karthik in some way, which I am. I have a slot to do that. But if we come up here to NLU evaluation, this is where I can start creating some interesting things. And again, from an automated perspective, this will be super awesome. But I can create an annotation set, and let's call this answer intent is my annotation set. And then in my utterance, I'm just going to use our names for now. So let's do Karthik first, because that's a good one, good unique one. And the intent name, I expect it to be the answer intent. My expected slot, let me see if I can scroll this up for you guys. My expected slot is going to be answer. And my slot value, if I just start typing, is Karthik Ragabathi. Now, I don't know why there were two values there. That's something else I'll need to check. But so that's my first one. Then we're going to create another one. We'll do Blankenburg. Right, and this one is going to be the answer intent. And this will be the answer slot. And this will be Jeff Blankenburg. Okay, so you can see that I've created a couple of those. I'm going to save my set, and then we'll go back to the NLU evaluation tool, and in here now you can see I have this annotation source, and I'm going to run an evaluation. So what this is going to do is run those commands against my model, and this is the important thing to remember, is it's only running it against the model of my skill. It has no knowledge or interaction with my code whatsoever. This is just showing me what my voice model will return, and this is what tests that first part, because it gives me an indication of what JSON file will be sent to my code. So this always takes longer than I think it should, but it's not too terribly long, especially for a couple of answers. This should pass. And we failed. So let's see how we failed. Oh, I see, because I expected a value of Jeff Blankenburg, and what it returned to me was Blankenburg. Interesting, because that's the slot value that I passed in. So this is useful from that perspective, but I'm always expecting the resolution, this is the resolution value. So I'd have to go back and fix these things. And it looks like I have an export JSON option as well to look at these things. But this allows me to build out a tool I'm sorry, I was reading Karthik's text. So this allows me to basically build out a list of expected responses for all of my utterances. And where this becomes really useful is when you have hundreds of them, right? I have a bunch of different answers, and as I add new ones, there's the possibility that because this is speech and voice and it's fuzzy and artificial intelligence, that as we add more data to our model, it's possible we break something that we previously created. And so there's no good way to know that without having something like this run. So I really wish it did resolutions. That would be really, really cool. But let's talk about what Karthik just recommended a second ago, which is I want to write Alexa open the skill, and the answer is welcome to the skill, and then the test runs and tells me, yes, I think, here, let's take a look at what the JSON looks like. No, you can see it's just a JSON dump of the results. It is not the actual JSON files that got created. But there is a way to do that too, and I've written a post about how we can basically test some of that stuff. I probably should revisit that at some point. But I used something called Postman. It's Postman. This is a tool called Postman, which basically allows you to write a series of commands against an API and test the results of that post. And so this is a fantastic tool. If you haven't used it before, it works really well. You can save these things. You can run all your tests. This was something that I was writing for Particle. I'll have to get back in there. Gold Zulu likes Insomnia, which is cool. But so maybe Postman is something that I should be using more too as I go through this, because I really want to be able to test my skills end to end. And there is an aspect of testing, which is this piece. I said something and it made the appropriate JSON manifest. But that's always where I start, because that's kind of the beginning. But the trick with this is that I'm basically testing Alexa's ability to do what it's supposed to do. Sarah has also posted this article about test flow. Yes, I have seen this, and when I played with it, I didn't love it, and I'll explain why. So this was something that Rob McCauley had put together, but it's a dialogue simulator, and I think this one also, if I recall, I have to remember how this worked, but Rob posted this in like 2018, middle of 2018. But I believe there was a lot of rigging you had to do. There's a bunch of other testing frameworks. If I do Alexa testing framework, Brian McIntosh had a good one also, where you can do these Alexa tests, and you can say, like, hey, I expect it to say the help message or whatever. The trick with a lot of these, and this is why I was writing this document here, just to kind of explain where we're going into, is the request interceptor runs, then identify which handler to use by running through the list of can handle functions. Once we've hit the can handle function, then we execute the appropriate action for that handler. And then this is another big thing that I get hung up on is our skill responds back to the Alexa service with a JSON response. This JSON response by default only contains the speech that we want to reply with. There really isn't any other data held in there, and this is something that gets hung up with me because I always add this word, randomized. My speech is very, very randomized in my skills, and there's no predictable way for me to say, oh, if I say this thing to Alexa, she's going to reply with this statement. There's no way for me to do that because I might have that sentence broken into 3 different segments, and I'm going to randomly spin a wheel and pick the first part of the sentence, the second part of the sentence, and the third part of the sentence, pin them together, and respond. Good morning, Kevin Evans. And so this is something that I really struggle with because I have to do something else to figure out what it is that the user might be doing. So this is kind of the world that I live in. So we're not necessarily going to be writing all of our tests today or solving all of these problems today, but I need to keep this in mind, that there are many, many pieces, and not all of them need to be tested. I think that this makes it feel easy. What I want to do is do this thing and see step 7. So what Karthik is recommending is I want to write a test that looks like step 1, and then I want to validate the results against step 7. Well, there's a lot that happens in between, and I feel like we are better off writing tests, for example, against step 6. Right? That's the thing that I really care about. Does it do the thing it's supposed to do when I tell it to do it? I can massage and worry about some of the other things that are in there, step 1, step 2, but I don't have a lot of control over that, honestly. All it really tells me is that, hey, something's broken, but I don't always have the ability to identify how to fix it because Alexa controls that. That is part of the Alexa service. Yeah, so create my voice. This is something that I have done. I don't know if I did it in this one. Let's see if I do this here. I don't think that I do. But it's something that we could do pretty easily. So let me open up another file, and I'll show you guys how I did this in the scavenger hunt skill that I'm working on, one of the other many projects that I really want to get back to. This is something that Suzuki would be incredibly interested to help me with. She hasn't seen the scavenger hunt, I don't think, but it's basically, yeah, I thought you'd like this. It is, it's not meant to be in the vein of the toughest developer puzzle ever, something that you and I worked on years ago, but it's meant to be a game that you can play with Alexa where she gives you hints, clues, images, that kind of stuff, and you have to respond to her with a specific code word or puzzle answer or whatever, but you have to do this in kind of a asynchronous way. You're not going to hear the clue and be like, oh, I know the answer. You're probably going to have to go look online. You're going to have to put some clues together, solve some puzzles, and then come back and say, oh, the answer is Chewbacca or whatever. But there's no way you're going to know that just by seeing or hearing the thing. So this is what I wanted to show you guys. This is the index for the scavenger hunt. Again, something I will probably revisit once we go through this. But you can see right here, this is how I can do some interesting things with testing. So by creating this session attribute that is called, I call it previous action, this lets me know what the user just did. So the previous action is always going to match the intent or whatever I was just doing. But because that's held onto, that means that the next time that I come into the skill, I'm going to be able to say, what were they trying to do, right? This is really useful for things like help. So if they say help, what were they doing the step before they said help? So it gives you a lot of context around what's going on and what they're trying to do. But it also gives me this really valuable tool for testing so that I don't have to match against the actual speech that I'm responding with. But instead, I can look at this property and say, oh, well, they hit the launch request. That's good. That's what I wanted. So why don't we... all right, Suzuki, I will. I forgot all about that song. So I think this is something that I probably need to do to make sure that I know what's going on and that we can build appropriate testing to do so. But it's these kinds of things, these session attributes, that either make me feel like I'm going to write a ton of duplicate code, or no, I guess maybe it'll be okay. I don't know. Here's the thing that I'm really hung up on as I think about trying to break a file like this apart. Look at what's happening here, just these lines. And this is a really simple example too, right? The first thing that I do is I look in handler input to find their locale. So that means that every other place that I go, I'm going to have to pass handler input. That's probably fine. Then I have speak output. That's some speech that I will ultimately have live in a database someplace. But so I'll have to make a call out to a database, which means I'll have some data functionality that I'll need to centralize so that I can make those calls. I guess that's doable. Action query, that's another database call that I'm making there. And then we have return handler input response builder. So this means that I'm going to be doing this stuff in some other file, and I'll have to do this like if I wanted to rework this so that it came back the way I wanted, it would be like return let's see, this is launch request. Return launch, like we could do. No, I don't want to do that. Let's come up with a good way to name these. Return standard launch request, or something like that, right? In here, I would have handler input, and then all of the other stuff, everything else that you see in this function, would be somewhere else. I think. That's probably how I have to do it, because you can see in here that I'm going to do things like changing voices and concatenating sentences to be speak output and action query and these kinds of things. So I think what I'll end up with in each of my handlers is just something basic, boring like this, or it might be handlers dot, so something like that. Or maybe no, I can't say. Can I say handle dot? I don't know if I can use that because I'm in a function called handle, but we'll see. So that's what I'm thinking I might do, just to break this stuff up a little bit. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have any opinions on this? Because I really would, as these things get bigger, and the scavenger hunt's a good example of this, right? Launch request is usually pretty simple, but even in that I have 3 cases, because I don't know whether or not I've authenticated you as a user, and do I have your phone number, and there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it. But as we get deeper into some of these, I mean, they just go on, and we're doing APL, and we're doing all this other stuff. I feel like I'm better off spreading this out so that I'm not living in I'm at 946 lines of code. I feel like I could break this down better. So let's just try that. Let's just play with this for a little bit and see what we can come up with, and then we'll try to even maybe write some tests. Is that what I want to do right now? Yeah, let's at least start with that. So we're going to create we're going to call these, we'll create a new folder called handler. And in there, I'm going to create a new file called index.js, just to be my default file. And then over here, I have an index.js commands. This is what it'll look like. Command K, Command O to auto fold your code for user navigation. Yeah, I know I can open and close the panels and the components. I don't love doing that, and in fact, some of the work that I did on Friday also helped me get to a place where like code auto formats. So when you look at these, you'll notice that it never lets me have any code beyond this line. So it fits in a really nice tight window, and it automatically formats stuff so it fits. So you'll see that there's that line for every one of these, and it just cleans it up very, very nicely. There's a lot of auto formatting that happens as part of some of these tools, and so I plan on using that quite a bit, because you'll notice that it never ever extends out. But I mean, the way code should work, right? It should be very standalone. It should be easily testable, and these kinds of things kind of give me that. So I think that's where I want to go with this. So I'm gonna just dump it. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Let's come back here and get the index commands file that I thought I was copying, and we'll bring that over here, just so we have the structure again. And so none of these exist, so we'll get rid of all those for now. We'll keep one, because we're going to need one. And we'll create a new file in here called launchRequest.js. And this is where my logic is going to go. So that means that in my handler, I can now call this launchRequest. And then this will become launchRequest. And then these can go away, like so. So we have this nice little simple clean file for launchRequest, but this is going to be all of our handlers. So as we continue to grow and modify, each one of these will live there. And then if we look at like my age file, I don't think that I had anything special in here. No, not really. I just had a module exports at the end. So we're going to have a function age. So let's do that in here. Launch request. I should be good about this. Handler input is pretty much what I'm going to pass to all of these. And then down here, we'll have module.exports equals launch request. Okay. So again, very, very basic. There's nothing included here. We will have some files that we need to include, especially as we're talking to our database. But that's okay. We have our handler file that's pointing to that thing. And so now we have our launch request, and we should be able to take all of this out. Maybe. Okay. So instead what I'm going to do is say return, and I'll have to, I didn't include it, so let's do that too. Const handlers. Did I call it handlers? Handler. Equals require, no. Require handler. If I could remember my slash. Okay. So now this should be able to be done, and I should be able to say return handler dot launch request handler input. And that should be it. This is what my index file is now going to look like. Now what's nice about this is that I will be able to get rid of a bunch of this stuff, right? I won't need a lot of these pieces because I will be using those externally in the individual includes where I need them, not in the main file. So I'm not going to delete anything now, but this is ultimately this is going to make my handler page, my handler document, the core root index.js. This is going to make it a lot more lightweight. It also encourages me then to think about building more handlers, because right now my launch request for the scavenger hunt, not only do I have, oh, where did that go? Not only do I have the launch request in here, but I have 3 different cases, right? If it's this, if it's this, if it's this. And so what I could do instead is build different handlers for those different cases. That feels like the right play, because right now what I'm going to do is I would move all of this logic into one function, and now I still have 3 cases that all require my testing to go through and bounce through all those files. So I feel like this will free up a lot of the ways that I do this stuff. So now we have launch request. I'm going to be more consistent with my R's. So let's fix a lot of that. So that's going to be handler.launch request. This is going to be launch request. This is going to be launch request. This is going to be launch request. This is going to be renamed to be launch request. And I think that's everything. Yeah. Okay. So we're now in a place where we've ripped all of that stuff out, and I just realized that I did not save it. So let's back up a little bit. Come on. Let me copy that, and then we can zoom back to where we were. Okay. So now that I've done that, let's come to launchRequest.js and drop this functionality in here and see, like, again, this is very, very basic. There's not a lot to it. But the first thing that I'm noticing is that W. Giorgio has his code in a gist. Awesome. So the first thing that I need is this locale. That should work. I have my launch request handler. So I think instead what I'm going to do is just something like launch. We should let it know what file we're currently in. So this is going to be handler.launchRequest.js. Okay. And I'm getting my locale, I'm getting this. Now this piece here, this await statement, this requires me to basically call out to Airtable, get the response that I want, and bring it back. We don't currently have any of that functionality available in this file. So what we need to do is think about Airtable. Do I even need Airtable? Because what I'll probably do is build out some core data functions. How do I want to do this? Let's say, yeah, let's do it this way. We're gonna have a bunch of Airtable stuff, so we're just gonna create a folder called Airtable and move it into the appropriate directory. And inside Airtable, I'm gonna create a folder called index.js, and it's gonna look a lot like this one. You can see how we start to build a lot of rigging. And so the functions that are going to live in here are going to be things like what I was just trying to call there, which is get random speech. So we'll have, this is going to be get random speech. And inside this Airtable function, I will also need a file called getRandomSpeech.js. And that will look a lot like this one, but with some includes. So getRandomSpeech is right here. So we'll have getRandomSpeech. This is going to be, what do I actually call? I pass in the table name and the locale. So we'll call table and locale here, table, locale. And we don't really need any of this because none of that is true. And we're going to output get random speech. But this is where my reference to Airtable is going to come in. So now I have that reference to Airtable, and then that means that down here where I have my get random speech function somewhere, get random speech, it looks like this. Let's just copy that. And take a look at what we're really doing here. So this line is probably still true. Right, we want to take and create this reference to my speech table. I want to make sure that I'm only getting files that aren't disabled, that meet a specific locale, and that live in a specific table. So that's all good. But we need this HTTP GET function. So we'll have to think about how we do that. I think that's probably just a... how do I want to best do this? So my HTTP... Is that what it's called? HTTP? Yeah. So it's just this function here, and I have that commented once in a while. I feel like this is just another file inside Airtable, because that's really when it's going to get used. So if I look at Airtable, we'll just call this get.js. And it's going to look like that. And then module.exports equals, we'll just call it get. So it's going to look like that. This has no references to anything except HTTPS. So I will need that reference in here. But again, we're going to be able to start ripping these things out of our main file, which will be good. It'll be nice to be able to do that. Like so. And so I think this is good. I think that there's nothing else in here that I really need. I have my runtime stuff, but that's fine. But there's no other references to anything. So that's my get function, which means here I can say do I even need that here? Yeah, I probably do. This is all learning for me. Get. No, let's do it first. Stop it. Get, and get. Yeah, I have, well, the thing is I probably will have different versions for different purposes. W. Giorgio, I agree with you, though. I think that there are, it depends on how I'm using this, but this specific function is kind of written in a way that is really only for Airtable. Like if you look at the function here, the first thing I do is I already have a lot of these values hard-coded in, and I just pass in a couple. So that's why Airtable.get probably makes a lot of sense for my function. And now if we come back to get random speech, this should work because I'm requiring Airtable, which will get me get random speech. No, hold on. Am I doing... Oh, I'm requiring Airtable. But now I also need to require let's think about this for a second. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you for coming, man. Yeah, I need to think about this. So this page doesn't need a reference to that at all. The first time that I need that is when I call launch request. And launch request makes a call to get random speech. So this is going to need the reference to Airtable. So we can say const Airtable equals require Airtable. And that lets me make the get random speech call, but get random speech needs a reference to the actual Airtable SDK. Does it? It does not, because of the way I'm doing this. So let's get rid of that for now. What it needs, though, is access to the get. So it needs const Airtable. That's a reference to itself. W. Georgia says, if you reference the folder, I think you can call the get, but make sure you change it in the get random speech. Yeah, I will have to do that. I think this just needs to be get. We definitely have broken 1,000 things, so we'll see what happens here. This needs to be get random speech. That's fine. This, if I look at get.js, yeah. See, the way I was really thinking this was going to work is that I would say Airtable, but I'm including itself, and I don't know if that's going to make things weird. Yeah, that's W. Georgia. That's what I'm thinking too. And then I can say here, I can say Airtable.get, which is what I want to do. I was avoiding this though because requiring Airtable, this file, is already requiring get random speech, which is the file that I'm in. So I don't know if that's weird or not. I don't know if it's going to hate that. We'll find out. That could be a very circular kind of reference. Okay, so I have that first line. Let's just take all three of these. So get random item. So I'm going to need helper. This is something that I had already started building. This is going to be helper. But did I have that as its own folder? No, I just had helper.js. Okay, so this can go away. And if I could type. Okay. So I think that all looks good. Yeah, I thought about that. Like taking this and putting it in a bunch of places. I don't know that I really want to do that. I'm hoping that it's going to be patient with me in this process. Let's see what we get. But this is another one of those things that I'm going to learn more about on Friday when I sit with my friend again, because now I'm going to go through a very tedious process of deploying this code, waiting for it to get there, sending a response from the dev portal. I feel like there's got to be a faster way to see if this works. So if we say ask deploy, local debugging is certainly an option. But it would be I don't know, it seems like it would be very interesting to come up with a new way to run all of this stuff in an effective, manageable, fast way. Because there's no way for me to get around uploading my model, right? Like that's the only way to test that. We'll just wait for this to happen. Hopefully my code doesn't blow up here in the build. Yeah, I like that, Gold Zulu. Okay, and we're done. So now let's come over to, not that, this. Look at our tests and see if we can't. Let's see what kind of horrible errors we get here.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
No kidding. Yeah, I'll bet saving a ton of time on the back end for sure, Gold Zulu. This is just stuff I need to get better at. It's just getting better with my tools, right? Like I just keep hitting the hammer with the nail because that's the thing that I can do. But then somebody shows me one day like a nail gun, and I'm like, what? Why haven't I been using this the whole time, right? That's just the world that I'm in right now, and it's only a matter of time before I get better at all of this. So I want log groups. This is not the right one. Is there a... I think it's this one. 527 and 1105. Yeah, that's the winner right there. Uncaught exception. Await is only valid in an async function. Well, this is maybe quite possibly the error I receive the most. So let's go look at what I just wrote, and in here we're going to find 1,000 ways where we're doing that wrong. So getRandomSpeech has await, but I did not put an async function right here. And get is fine. These are fine. Probably gonna look like that. So let's update some code. Yeah, like I said, there's so many tools, there's so many things to do and to know, and sometimes it's just a matter of like going to school and figuring this stuff out again. And that's definitely the world that I'm in right now. I'm just trying to reinvent. I'm trying to make myself better. But we'll go step by step because we also want to make progress on our code, right? That's an important piece of this too. So let's give that another run, see if that fixes it. Yeah, it all started like that's the reinvention. I'm reinventing myself. It's going to happen with a haircut here really soon.
There was a problem with the requested skills response
because the hair is out of control. I can barely manage it. It's so long. Okay, we're at. No. I need a newer log, please. There we go. 1108. Uncaught exception. On 45. I'm sorry, what? None of those are mine. What? Yeah, but I... Okay, let's move this down so we can see what we're doing. Let's look at all of our new files. So get.js. Is there an await? Well, we'll do this anyway. Async. Is there await in there? There's not. Okay, so then we have this file. Nothing to await in there. We'll close that. Get random speech. I have an await here, but I just put this async in here. there. That's good. This does, I don't need anything there. Launch request. This one. Okay. One more. Yeah, man, I can't wait to write 1,000 tests that will tell me whether this stuff is working. Almost there. Almost there. Done. Okay. So let's come here. And then I think the other thing I'm going to try and do is build out an API gateway. Maybe, yeah, we got time to do that, I think. So that I can start doing some of the testing that Karthik was talking about. I always want to revisit that because I always forget how to do it. So that'd be a cool thing for you guys to see, I think, because it works pretty well.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Really? Are you sure about that, Alexa? 11:11. That's now, right? Yeah. Could not find module Airtable. That doesn't surprise me either. Because we are... Did it say what file was the issue? It does not. That's going to make this debugging stuff tougher. But if I write tests, hopefully that won't be much of an issue. But it does not tell me... I really wish it told me where that was. Okay. So I can't include Airtable. That's probably got to be here. What if I just say that? Because that's all I really need. No, that's not correct. This probably isn't where it's broken either. It's probably here. Let's see. This is all learning. We're learning things. And you have to break stuff to fix it. That's this is my life's philosophy. If you go to my Twitter, you go to my bio. I build stuff, I break stuff, I talk about it. That's pretty much what we're doing here today. So, yeah, that's what's going on. So we just published some code. Let's come in here and see what happens. I'm sure it breaks, and that's okay.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
All right. 14. Cannot find module Airtable. Well, now there's only one reference to that, I think. I totally agree with you, Urban Blaster. Sometimes you just got to blow some stuff up. So this is where I can't find it. So launch request is in the handler. So I think this is just a matter of... Get out of the way, find box. Let's try that. Yeah, this is starting to make me ask all the questions, right? Just by thinking about breaking this stuff out, now I have questions like how do I see my logs locally? How do I test my code locally. We're gonna go through all of that. That's probably gonna be our June. That's gonna be a good time. Okay, let's try one more time. It's okay if it still breaks. Maybe it breaks differently.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Let's see. Probably that. I'm getting sloppy. But we'll get there. I don't know what else I can do to require that. That seems like it should work. Okay. Last try, and then this is actually, I'm not interested in necessarily solving the world's problems today. I just wanted to play with this a little bit, but there's something else I want to try, which is the Postman to API gateway to Lambda testing.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
I've gotten it set up before, and I wrote myself some instructions. So I think we'll go visit that set of instructions and see what I can come up with. Cannot find module get.js. Okay. It's a new error. That's always good, right? So get random speech. So it's probably this. This is such a slow process. Unspecified software is here. I was just talking about you. We're trying to apply some of the lessons that you and I went through on Friday, and break some things out into some smaller chunks, more manageable chunks. And I'm trying to make sure, like, one of the things that I originally did, Clark, and I'm not asking you to solve stuff today, we'll figure that stuff out in the future, is I have this giant file, right? This is 900 some lines, or not this one, but they can be. And what I'm trying to do is get down to this. So basically, we have a JSON file come in from Alexa. I actually wrote a thing somewhere. User says something, right? Ask dev tips about in-skill purchasing. Alexa service uses speech-to-text and natural language understanding to create a JSON manifest. That gets passed to my Lambda function. The Alexa SDK request interceptor runs. This is something that I can do to detect some things. And then we can identify which handler is running by going through these list of can handle functions. And so this is all built into the SDK. So I have this can handle. If this statement is true, then go ahead and run this code, right? And so I have just stacks and stacks of these kinds of structures. But what I'm trying to do is break this piece out. I'm not interested in testing that entire process too here, but once I've identified that it's a launch request and this is the thing that I want to do, I want to put this in its own world so that I can test that individual module. I can pass values to it and do all of that kind of stuff. So that's what we're working on right now. But there's a lot of toolchain stuff that I still really need to play with. And some of the stuff that you taught me on Friday, I'm still learning how to apply. But one of the things that I really wanted to do was just take like my launch request handler and break it down. And so now I have, if we close this, I have a function called handler in here. I have launch request. This is the code that was in there. Excuse me. And so now I'm modifying how I think about including these files and where they live and that kind of stuff. So that's all we're going through unspecified is thinking about restructuring this stuff. And I feel like we might be there. We can totally do it, but I'm gonna unload on you on Friday again. We're gonna do it. So this is all I'm doing right now is trying to test against my skill to see if this new file structure will actually work. And I have a number of errors. this is one of the other
things. There was
things.
a problem with the requested skills response.
This is one of the other things that I'm working on, is how do I take a lot of these things that I'm doing in a browser, like looking at my logs, and look at them locally instead. So this is 19, that's probably right. And it can't find module helper. Okay, that makes sense too. Because, I'm in the wrong one. Because the place that I have helper is here, and this needs to be that. Because that just happens to live up here in the root, so I just need a better reference to that. So, Clark, some of the things that I'm going to figure out and work through, hopefully before we get together on Friday, is how do I do local debugging? Because right now I'm actually deploying this code via the SDK, or via the CLI, out to my actual Lambda function, and then I'm running a test against it from the dev console. All this is really slow and awful, and I think there are mechanisms in which I can do all of this stuff locally. It's just a lot of putting a bunch of pieces together. So I come over here now to the dev portal, and I run my command. Right, I want to be able to do this all just from my IDE. I don't want to have to do this.
Jeff, you broke something.
Ooh.
What would you like to do next?
We're getting so close. Now we have my own handwritten errors. So that means the skill's not just failing. So let's take a look at what our error is. Error handled. Get random speech is not defined in launchRequest.js. All right. So we're in here. Get random speech is right here. Maybe I didn't need that. I think that might be it. I think that might have been it. I don't actually know, but that Airtable file, if I look at my Airtable folder, I have an index that get random speech is definitely defined in. So it feels like maybe it was just that extra slash. Maybe? I don't know what else it could be. Well, let's give that a try. And we'll see what we get from it. So once I can confidently do this, once I can break one handler out, and this was a simple, easy example to start with, then I'll feel really good about breaking these down into individual components. And a lot of my web calls that I make, like these get random speech. One of the other things that I struggled with after I left my awesome tutor session with Unspecified Software on Friday was I make a lot of calls to APIs where I'm passing data in. So it's a post or a put or something like that. And for whatever reason, I can't get those to work using a new library fetch that he introduced me to. I can do gets, no problem. Those are easy, but the posts and the puts don't seem to work the way that I would expect them to. I think I have all my options correct and everything, but it's just not working. So let's see what Chewbacca has to say this time. Well, I don't want to dig in too deep in that.
Triggered answer intent. What would you like to do next?
Oh yeah, I hit the answer intent. Should I have hit the answer intent? Peter Ritchie with the follow. My goodness, I haven't seen you in forever. I'm assuming you're the Peter Ritchie that I know, but thank you for the follow. That's super awesome, man. I appreciate it. And welcome to the show. We are hitting the answer intent, but I don't think we. Oh, I know. Okay, we're good. Let's do this. Let's quit. And let's do that again, where we're not actually already running the skill. So now we say open this, and it should do a launch request.
Jeff, you broke something. What would you like to do next?
Okay, so it didn't do it. Okay, so I told you guys I was going to stop because I want to do something else. This is stuff that I can work on in the future. 11.23, 11.24, yeah. My error was still get random speech is not defined. Launch request line 7. Line 7, get random speech. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Launch request is here. So it feels like these are in parallel folders, right? They're inside handler and Airtable, so I should be able to say I can always just say I'm in this folder. If I wanted, huh? I need to go up one directory, and then I want the Airtable folder. That should work. Anybody know what I'm doing wrong here? So I'm in this file, launch request, which is in the handler folder. Parallel to that, there's a folder called Airtable, and in there's an index. So it seems like if I want to include this index here, I should say require ... /Airtable, which should by default get the index.js file, which already includes these two. That feels right to me. Get random speech is here. The index looks like this. I don't know. This looks pretty right to me. Can you put them side by side? Yes, sir. I don't know which two you want to see side by side. Do you want the launch request? So I'm requiring ... /Airtable. This is the file that I'm pointing to. I'm calling get random speech, which you can see is referred to this way with the same caps. I have the same file name here. Oh, you're totally right. Totally right. This is just a copy and paste error. Airtable dot get random speech, because it's inside that file. So why wouldn't I? Dumb. Thank you, Clark. So that's the issue, is I need to refer to Airtable dot get random speech because reasons. The same way that I'm doing helper dot change voice right here. Okay. Thank you, Clark. That's just a dumb mistake. Well, let's see if it works now. I'll be very excited if we actually got this all working. No, I think I like this. I like this syntax. I think this is very readable. Again, as we talked about on Friday, I hate magic, and so anytime there's magic that doesn't explain to the reader how it's happening, I hate it. This explains it to the reader. Okay, so we're running out of time to do the thing that I still want to do. So let's quit the skill and open the skill, and hopefully we get like a... You can say hello.
Jeff, you broke something.
I know.
What would you like to do next?
I broke something. What did I break? Airtable. Get random speech. Yeah, this is something that was kind of gross. Let's see, if I look at get random speech, look at get, how do I want to do this? I guess I could do that. This feels this feels wrong, what I'm doing right here. And I'm sure there is a more appropriate or cleaner way to do this that would be more easily communicated. And this is stuff that I can dig apart with Clark on Friday. But it feels like including that top file, that Airtable file, it technically already includes this getRandomSpeech. What I'm trying to do is get one of its sister functions in here. And this feels gross because it feels like I'm including it twice. I don't even know if it'll work. We'll see. We're just exploring.
Jeff, you broke something. What would you like to do next?
Okay. What did I break now? Airtable.get is not a thing. Well, I don't know that I agree with you on that. So Airtable.get should be a thing. Isn't this how we referred to it in launch request? Yeah, see, this is where it's getting gross. So I guess I could do... how do I want to do this? I need this get function here. Can I do like this? Like that, and then would I say get.get? I hate that, but if it'll work. Haha, Gold Zulu, nice pun. So, yeah, I think that'll work. I didn't like this. If I can do that, that's amazing. Let's give that a try. Clark says it might work. And if we look at this, that's all I'm exporting. But again, this might all go away if I can find a better way to use fetch with posting. I'm just using this because it works. But we'll get to the other thing. So one more try. This is the last try. It doesn't matter if it works or not. This is the last time we're going to try this because I want to go do another thing. But it would be really awesome if it worked.
Jeff,
it didn't.
You broke something.
Didn't work.
What would you like to do next?
Let's go see if it's the same issue. Oh, it's a new error. Helper on launch request 10. I don't really want to fight with that right now. Okay, Clark really wants to see the post. I didn't want to do that right now, but I will do it. So it is the lamp one. So down here, this is my fetch, right, where I'm passing in options. Maybe it's that I'm not applying the options. I have my URL, I have my options. Is there some way to apply the options? Maybe that's the thing I'm not doing. Again, there's magic in here. Like, I never use URL, I just pass it in. Because fetch does all the stuff behind the scenes. So I think these two things are fine. These are what my options look like. my data looks like this, and it's JSON stringified because it needs to be a string of JSON that gets deserialized on the other side. My header looks like this. I don't know. This is a better debug done in person, Clark. So I'm gonna save it just because I have something else that I want to try to do again. So let's go to let's see if I can find this easily. If I do Alexa unit testing Postman. Okay, so this is a thing that I wrote a long time ago with no images or real purpose in doing any instruction with it, but it was just something I wanted to remember how to do. So the first thing I want to do is go to AWS and create a new API gateway. API gateway. I've set a few of these up before, but we'll create a new one. So I don't have one. We'll create a new one, create a new API, and let's make sure that I'm following their instructions. I'm going to break this off. Sign in the console, create API. Make sure you have chosen new API. Well, this is new. These are new choices. I think this is the one that I want. Build. Okay, so you've chosen new API from the radio buttons at the top of the page. So new API. We're going to call this Alexa Dev Tips. And endpoint, that's fine. So we'll hit create API. Make sure I've got that right. I'm creating my API. Now, our next step is to create a resource inside of our API. Click the Actions button at the top of the page. Choose Create Resource. Okay. This is why I write myself instructions, because there's no way I'd ever remember any of this stuff. Give your new child resource the name Alexa Resource. I think I can probably do better than that, but we'll... that's fine. Just to have a name, we'll call it Alexa Resource. So after this, you can create a Create Resource button. Do I need the API Gateway box checked? I don't think I do. Okay, I have my resource. Click the Actions button again and choose Create Method. And what I wanted to do in here is, so the new drop-down box that was created, choose Post from the options. Cool. Click the round checkbox button. Cool. For setup of your post function, you can leave the integration type as Lambda function. That's great. For the Lambda region, choose the region where your Lambda function lives. This is most likely US East 1, and mine is. And then it should autocomplete for me. So I have to remember the name of my crazy Lambda function, which is like... Can I just start typing in here? Alexa Dev Tips. There we are. Okay. In the Lambda function box, start typing the name of your Lambda function. Autocompletes for you. Click Save. Okay. Let's do that. Yep, that's fine. One last time, we need to open the Actions button and choose Deploy API. Okay. Now, copy the invoke URL from the blue box at the top of the screen. Copying. I love when I write thorough instructions. Okay, using Postman. So now we're going to go play some Postman. So let's do this. Let's move my instructions over here next to Postman. Postman. There we go. Okay. Later, Clark. I will see you later, man. Thanks for swinging by. Do not save. Okay, we got to blow this up a little bit because it's too hard to read. Okay, so create a profile, log in to Postman software. Near the center of the screen is enter request URL. Well, we probably need to do a new collection. We're going to call this Alexa Dev Tips. And these are going to be all the tests that go against my skill. And we may want to do some authorization and stuff here. So we'll get there in a moment. Create. Near the center of the screen, enter request URL right here. Okay. So in there, I'm going to post the URL that I created a second ago. Change the get drop-down post to a post. Below the text box, click the headers tab. Okay. For the key, use content type, and for this, use application. I think this is the one I want to copy. So, key, content type, application, JSON. Okay. On the body tab, choose raw from the radio and paste a Lambda request in the large text box. Okay. So this is where I want to come over here. And we just want to get a launch request, which I think is what this one is. Yeah, so we'll just take this whole thing, and we're going to come over to Postman, and we're going to put this here. This is the whole JSON object for my launch request. Okay, you should now be able to click the large blue send button. Missing authentication token. This is the thing that I always forget, because there was a time when I didn't need to do this. And I never remember how to set up this authentication. So maybe I'm not going to do this as much as I thought today. Authorization. That's great. So let's go back here to my API gateway stuff. Is this the URL that I want to use instead? There we go. So you can see, Jeff, you broke something, but this is my actual response. So now what's really cool about this is that I can come into this and I can say tests. And one of the things that I want to do is there's a JSON, check a JSON value. Get. Response body, JSON value check. So they give you some pre-written stuff here, but I can basically check the response that I got. So we can look at any of my session attributes. One of the session attributes that I want to be able to add is previous action. And that lets me know that that I am expecting that they just did this launch request or whatever, because you can see in this response there isn't a lot for me to work with. There isn't a lot for me to test to say, oh yeah, they had a launch request. So let's, but my code is broken right now, so it's not really going to work. Maybe we can get this to work. If we come back into my code and we look at my core index file, the original index file, and we look at launch request, maybe we can do this. Maybe if we do how do I get session variables? I do it all the time and I never remember. Session attributes, please. Okay, so if we go to launch request and we say this, and then we say session attributes dot previous action equals launch request, and we deploy this, I think that should come through as a session variable, and then I can write a test to make sure that that thing is doing what it should. And then, Kevin, where this becomes super handy is when I create a whole bunch of these. The current revision ID. Did I make a change here? I haven't made any changes here. Why would there be an issue with my code? I don't remember how I fixed this. Oh, I remember. We had to go into skill JSON. No. No, it's in the ask lambda. No. Zero this out. I think that's the thing that I had to do last time to fix this. Okay, that's been updated. So now we should be able to say should be a launch request. Thank you, Lord of Sound. And then JSON data is this, and then I want to check JSON data.value, so we need to look at what my response is. It's going to be, well, let's just send it again. Let's find that my test fails, but let's take a look at what my response looks like now. Now I have this previous action, which is launch request. So we're going to look at session attributes.previous action in my test. JSON data dot session attributes dot previous action to equal launch request. So we're going to call this launch request. The collection that I want to save it into is Alexa dev tips, save, send. And you can see that my test results already tell me 1 out of 1. So if I click on this, should be a launch request passed. And that's because my test is checking to see, was it a launch request and did that thing come through? So what's cool about this is that now I can write a whole bunch of tests using different lambdas and then just run all of them at once. So this is pretty cool. If we go to the runner in here, once I have my tests built, I can come in here and just say Alexa dev tips log responses, run this. And it's going to go and it's going to run every one of my tests, and it'll just go bang, 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 bang. And it'll just work its way through them and show me that all of these things have passed or failed. And then I can dig into them, of course, and see, like, why did this one fail or whatever. So I think this is a super handy tool. Again, I think there's probably going to end up being a command line solution that I end up using for something like this. But what this does, and as we talked about earlier, is if we look at my file here, this allows me to basically test from here I know what the JSON manifest is, right? So I'm testing from here to step 3 to see what the result is on step 7. So I'm skipping all of these pieces, but it allows you to test that flow more or less to be able to say, oh yeah, I hit the right thing. So the thing that we don't do is what Karthik was talking about very early on, which is that I just write statements like this and it goes all the way through. Because we actually have to call out to Alexa, get that JSON manifest, then call our Lambda, do that thing, and do all this testing. So this basically starts on step 3 and gets you to step 7. And by using that, what did I call it? The previous action. How do I get out of collection? Okay, so by using that previous action property, which is, if I go back and look at my response here, body, you can see that now this is something that I can check for in every one of these, because almost all the rest of this is meaningless to me. It doesn't actually give me any value. Right now I can do things like let's build another one. If I go to my testing console here, right, and now I say change voice to Sally, one of the voices.
I am now using the voice of Sally.
Yeah.
What would you like to do next?
So I can take this and copy this thing. Yeah, let Karthik know that it's not working. But over here now I can create a new test. And what I generally do with these is I'll just come into the body, change this out, and save this as something else. I think I can save as. So this is now me saying, hey, change the voice to Sally. Everything else is pretty much the same. And my test is going to fail, which is totally fine. So I'm going to save this as change voice request Sally. And I'm going to save this to the collection that is Alexa Dev Tips. Nope, Alexa Dev Tips, save. And then I know my test is going to fail, that's fine, but now you can see we have these 2 individual tests here. And now when I run it, and you can see that now this one fails because my test isn't a launch request. It should be a change voice request. So now we can write 2 tests for this. The first one is going to be, if we look at our response, it should be the previous. Oh, let's actually send it. See what we get. So you can see now that I didn't put a. This requires some diligence to do, but I think that if we come in here and we get random speech, no launch request, these 2 lines just need to go everywhere. And I agree, Treylast. I know that that's an issue and something that I'll have to figure out a way to disguise. Okay, my voice has changed or something like that. But let's change voice intent handler. We can do this right here. And we want this to be change voice intent. So by just setting that previous action, now I have something that's testable, right? And this is something that I've really been struggling with, because there isn't a testable value that comes out of this. You can't just compare against your speech because it could be randomized. So I really needed to come up with some other way to manage this stuff, and previous action seems to do that. Okay, we are there. So now if we come over here, let's look at my tests for this. So the first one is previous action should now be change voice intent. But then I'm also going to have a second test. And this is going to be SSML should contain Sally. And the reason for this is because if we look at this piece here, we should be looking for a value that looks like that, voice name Sally. And so I'm going to take that, and I'm going to just say contain. Yeah, this is a contain string. No, don't do that. So I'm just using their kind of like built-in stuff, so I don't have to do it. So this is going to be SSML contains Sally. And this in here is going to just say that. So now I have two tests. Not only should it be a change voice intent request, but it should also contain Sally. Like that should be the new voice that changed. So now I have two tests to run. So if I save this, and now we come over here and run the whole thing, boom, 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 and they all pass. And the reason for this is because, as you saw here, we are receiving the voice named Sally. We're where I don't know where I have to run it again. Send. Down here we have our previous action. Now what's super cool about this is that if I wrote these things initially, if I wrote the tests first before I wrote a lot of my functionality, then what I can do is come in here and say, like, let's say that I break this and I lose an N in my change voice intent, or whatever it might be. If it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is change the voice or set the previous action to the appropriate value, then my tests fail. And so this gives me the confidence as I'm going through this. The big one for me is that the voice changed to Sally. That's the thing that I care about. But this previous action is another big deal. And so if I come back to my test and I run them all again, this one failed. And the reason was because I forgot an N, right? I took that N just now. So this is an opportunity for us to round trip things and say, here's the JSON that I gave it. This is the outcomes that I expect. And given those outcomes, are they all true when it actually happens? So this is, again, I find this super useful and handy. Here, let me post a link to, where did it go? This. If you guys want to take a look at this thing, you can. The thing you're going to get hung up on is the authorization. So I need to add some stuff to that file that indicates how you do the authorization stuff in Postman, because you basically have to get your authorization, your AWS secret code and a couple of other things and bring those in. But it is doable, as we have demonstrated here today. So let me fix that error that I just introduced, intent. And then I think maybe I'll write some more tests so that as I'm building out this skill, I can have the confidence that this stuff is going to work. Now, I don't think that this does a fantastic job for letting me know how Alexa's doing. All this does is takes a predefined intent request, passes it to my code, and sees that the response that I get back contains the things that I expect it to contain. But if something breaks in my model, I'm not testing anything related to my model. And so that is where I think using a tool like this, if we come back to build, you'll recall we looked at this early on in the session where we were looking at the NLU evaluation. So I think I'm going to have to figure out how to set this up properly, but using this lets you test, as we were looking at before. Where did my files go? The Nlu Utterance Profiler basically lets you choose these two to say, yes, I'm hitting the appropriate intent, yes, I'm getting the right slot value, and then you can build separate tests to run steps 3 through 7. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully this helps you guys a little bit today. But this is stuff that I've been playing with forever, and it's time to get more serious about it. So that is where we are today, and I'll be back here on Friday morning. I'll be on Unspecified Software's channel on Friday afternoon, and depending on how much time I have, because I have a bunch of other, I'm working on 4 virtual conferences right now all at the same time, and it's taking up a ton of my time to prep and prepare and get this stuff all ready. If I have time, I really want to add Tuesday and Thursday afternoon sessions. So it'd be like 2 to 4, something like that. So I'll keep you guys posted on that, but this is super fun. I'm glad you guys are able to join in. But with that, we'll sign off for today, and we'll see you again very, very soon.